Good evening. I'm Angie Williams and you're watching Choctaw Chat on Sun TV. Thank you for joining us for our second part of our three-part series on issues that Choctaw County voters will be facing as they go to the ballots on June the 3rd. We had our first broadcast on the unit system. We had our panelists here. Tonight we're going to be talking with the Democratic candidates for Sheriff of Choctaw County. And next week we hope you'll join us again for the last of this series. We'll be speaking with the candidates for the commissioner's offices. So thank you for joining us again. We certainly want to thank our sponsors, Alpha Insurance of Givertown and Hardee's of Butler. Without their generosity, broadcasts like this would not be possible. And certainly the Sun TV for bringing us these broadcasts in the first place to help enlighten our voters so that we can make better decisions when we do go to the polls and vote on the issues and the elections facing us on June the 3rd.
Don't settle for second best. Alpha is Alabama's #1 life insurance company. We offer a variety of plans to fit your insurance needs. Plus, you'll get friendly, personal service from our hometown team. Call Alpha and see why more Alabamians trust Alpha to protect their families than any other company. In Givertown, call Alpha agents John Cave or Randy McKee at 251-843-5556 or stop by our office at 13740 Highway 17. In Butler, call Alpha agents Alex DeShadows or Scarlett Johnston at 205-459-2212 or stop by our office located at 229 South Mulberry Avenue in Butler. Alabama's #1 life insurance company, Alpha.
Back to work.
The Western Extra Bacon Thick Burger at Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. See X-Men Days of Future Past in theaters May 23rd.
Tonight we're holding a discussion with candidates who will be on the Democratic primary ballot for Choctaw County Sheriff. The Sun sent an open invitation to participate in the sheriff's discussion to all the candidates through the media. 2 of the 3 qualified candidates responded. Current Sheriff Tom Abate to my right and candidate Scott Lawley. Due to scheduling conflicts, Mr. Lawley was unable to attend our live broadcast. However, we have pre-recorded his answers to the questions that you'll hear asked tonight. Neither candidate was given the specific questions in advance. They were, however, given general topics of discussion. The topics include some of those presented to the Sun Advocate by readers and others that were generated by the Sun Advocate editorial staff. And we'll switch, one candidate will get the question first and then the next question will go first to the other candidate in a sense of fairness. That's the way the format will go tonight. And so just bear with us as we switch from our live candidate to our video candidate. And let me share just a little information with you about our 2 candidates who are with us tonight. Current Choctaw County Sheriff Tom Abate graduated from 3 different police academies, including the FBI National Academy. He spent 37 years in law enforcement. 20 of those years he served as Givertown Chief of Police. And he also has 5 years of military police experience. He was elected in 2010 to the position of Choctaw County Sheriff, of course, the position he holds tonight. He's married to Vicki Abate, and he's very, very busy because he has 5 children. Scott Lawley is a native of Choctaw County. He's trained and served with the U.S. military, the Alabama State Troopers, and the Alabama Bureau of Investigation. He holds a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of South Alabama. His law enforcement career includes serving with the 1165th Military Police Company in Butler, working in executive security to oversee the security for the Capitol Complex buildings, and serving as liaison to the U.S. Secret Service in guarding U.S. dignitaries, including the last 3 presidents. He was also head of security for the Alabama Governor's Mansion. He began working with the Alabama Bureau of Investigation in 2010. He's dealt mostly with cases that involve murder and public corruption. Lolly is married to Dana Lolly, and they have 2 children. Tom, I'll give you the first question, and thank you for being here with us. We appreciate it, giving us your time and
thank you, Angie.
Your information. So the first question is this: does the county have a problem with drugs in the schools? And if so, what can be done through the sheriff's office to address it?
Yes, ma'am. All of our schools in the county have a drug problem. The county itself, the state, and the country it's just horrible right now. A communication, a partnership with the school system, the principals, the teachers, some type of education program to teach them what to look for at their schools. Faster response from my side of it, and swifter prosecution from the juvenile authorities. With those 3 things, and we have to get the message out to the kids, if they get caught in school with any type of drugs or drug paraphernalia, that they will be suspended, expelled, or whatever. And I think once that precedent is set, we'll start seeing a decline in our drugs.
Okay, I certainly hope so. Also, if you would address the use of canine units in the schools.
Yes, ma'am, I will. In the past, we only had 1 canine for the sheriff's department. It was a part-time dog. Basically, he only worked on the weekends. Just recently, within the last 6 months, we purchased a new drug dog. We have a very experienced police officer from Meridian. His name is Jeff Payton. We sent him to canine school with the Butler police officer, who has a canine. We now have 2 that through the partnership between Butler and the Sheriff's Department, we'll now be able to go to the schools and team up. 1 dog just can't do a proper search of a school, of all the lockers. So while 1 dog rests, the other dog can work, and we're excited about getting that started next year.
Okay, great. And just a add-on question to that: what types of drugs? Can they sniff out all kinds of drugs, different types of drugs?
Yes, ma'am. I'm not an expert in it, but it's of course marijuana, barbiturates, cocaine, crack cocaine, several different things, but they are very, very good.
And I know the trainers get very attached to those dogs.
They do. They keep that dog with them 24 hours, 7 days a week. When they go home, the dog goes with them. They play with them. When they're out in the cars, the dog's with them. And when they come to the office, the dog comes in, and he's something. Let's put it that way.
Oh, it's interesting. And now we'll go to Scott Lolly for his response.
Drugs in the local schools. As I've been out campaigning and stuff, I'm quite shocked at the concern of a lot of the employees in schools and a lot of the parents about drugs in school, and the whole drug culture and popularity and everything. I think the way we could assist the school systems with drugs in the school is to, there's already a canine, maybe offer our services to do searches of the lockers of the schools and stuff like that, work with and coordinate with the superintendent of education or the principals. My understanding is that State Board of Education needs advance notice or to be notified when a search is about to be conducted. And I could see searching the lockers, randomly searching the lockers, as long as the school would notify the State Board of Education that we're about to conduct a search, and search those lockers. And if contraband is found or if narcotics is found, we could leave that up to the option of the school system as to how they want to handle it. If the school system wanted to handle the problem or if they elect for us to handle it. Either way, we could work with them. I think a lot of times some of the biggest fear within teachers and educators is in relation to police. Sometimes they're a little scared that the police may get a little out of control in their schools. And I think part of the problem there is you need to communicate with your superintendent of education, your principals, your headmasters, and let them know that you're there to help them. You're there to back up and reinforce what they're trying to do, and that you know, you're not there to subvert their goals or anything like that. But you're there to work with them.
Our second question will go first to Scott, so we'll be going back to him for video after I ask the question. And it is, how important do you think the use of K-9 units are to the county law enforcement, and do you see adding more such units in the department?
The K-9 program, the drug dog program, it's a great asset as far as people searching, the manual aspect of searching for drugs, and the time that is consumed by an officer searching a car or a home. You compare that to a K-9, a well-trained K-9 searching for drugs, and the dog will find drugs and narcotics well in advance of a human. They do a much better job. So a dog he's an absolute necessity. You need, at a minimum, you need one dog. I couldn't sit here and say that we would get another dog because everything involves money. And you got to look at Choctaw County and the county budget. But it's imperative that we have at least one dog that can respond somewhere in the county to check for narcotics or to check for drugs. Dogs are trained differently. Some of them are dual trained as protection or attack dogs, if you would, and drug dogs. And then you have some dogs that are trained just for narcotics. My preference is for just strictly a narcotics dog, because what I've found is that the narcotics dog, the dedicated narcotics dog, is always your better dog.
Do you need me to repeat the question, or got it?
No, ma'am, I think I've got it. You know, with our two dogs that we have, putting on a third dog or a second full-time dog, like Scott said, you know, there's not a lot of money left in the budget. That one canine that we just purchased was over $10,000 with the training. So, you know, maybe in the future if we have another dedicated officer, plus you have to have the deputy that's willing to take on that job. I mean, it is a full-time job to take on that dog, and you got to have this, you know, special person. But I think with what we've got, Jeff's already made several good drug arrests with the dog already, and we're extremely proud of him. But you know, we'll see what happens in the future.
Okay, thank you. And Tom, you get the next question first. Okay. What is your policy on public and media access to arrest records?
Okay, our arrest records are open to the public totally. Anyone can come by the office. As long as the secretaries are not too busy, they can release some information. We cannot release social security numbers and different things for, you know, identity theft. But if an individual comes in for, you know, a valid reason, not just, you know, going through our records for no reason, we do allow that. We are the first administration in the history of the Sheriff's Department to have a written policy and procedures manual, not only with the Sheriff's Department, but also with the jail, and that is part of our policy manual.
Okay, all right. And what about juvenile records, arrest records?
Juvenile records are not released to the public.
Okay, all right. And now that same question will go to Scott Lawley.
Well, that's very simple. I don't know how it's handled right now. I can't speak for what's going on now, but I can tell you this: it's a matter of public record. What you do is you follow the law, and the law says that the state of Alabama law says that the sheriff is charged with keeping one master record of every inmate both into and out of the county jail, and that's usually a big book where you record everybody's name and information in there. And according to the public records law in the state of Alabama, that is a matter of, that's a public record, and that's open for your viewing. As far as security issues with allowing the news media to come into the jail, you have to make that book open for inspection. And that's just the bottom line. That's the law. You got to make the book open for inspection. And I've never known of a problem with that. The news media comes into the jail and you provide them the book. Now, you could do something easy for them. You could provide them a fax list of the names, but you also need to make the book open to them. And that's what I'll do. I'll obey state law.
Our next question will go first to Scott, and unfortunately, domestic violence seems to be a very prevalent issue in Choctaw County. And aside from arresting those involved, what can be done from your perspective to address the issue of domestic violence?
Domestic violence in Choctaw County, it's the same situation in any other county you go to. Domestic violence for Choctaw is the same as for Washington. Actually, it may be a little bit higher because you get into the economics of things and you get into the unemployment in the area and stuff like that. Things like this will raise your domestic violence level up. I don't know what the sheriff could do really to prevent any of that, but we do have one area of concern. We don't have a safe house for victims of domestic violence in Choctaw County. What we've relied on in Choctaw County for years is another relative. You know, if you have a lady that's the victim of domestic violence, maybe she would go stay with her mother, father, aunt, or uncle. But from time to time, you do run into a scenario of where someone's a victim of domestic violence and they have no family in the county. And what has always had to happen in those situations is you would have to refer them to maybe Marengo County, to a house up there, or to another area outside the county. In some scenarios, I've known in the past of where they would, you know, help them to get to a hotel room in the county or something of that aspect. But there are no safe houses. That should be addressed, but that wouldn't be absolutely just the sheriff's issue. That would be a lot of different agencies that would need to come together to work something out on that.
And Tom, the same question to you.
Domestic violence has always been a problem as long as I've been in law enforcement. Yes, it's definitely on the increase in our county. It's not a simple answer to this question. Each domestic violence call is different. They're extremely dangerous, especially when we have only one officer that responds. We don't know what we're going to have when we get there. But Alabama state law provides that if the deputy sees some type of violence, some type of altercation where physical violence is shown, someone's going to go to jail. And they have to stay there for an 8-hour cooling off period. The victim, you know, we try to get them to their other family member support groups. If they have a strong church support group, we try to, you know, notify them if the victim, you know, approves all that. But there is no definitive answer to that question. It's just a daily problem that we deal with, and it's we deal with it incident by incident. Some are pretty easy to handle and some are very difficult. Some do require a female actually being transported to a safe facility in another county.
Okay, thank you. And you get the next question first. Would you discuss your ideas concerning the need to construct a new jail in Choctaw County?
Our present jail was constructed in 1964. When I took office, of course, the jail it was closed prior to me taking office. It cost several $100,000 to get it reopened just where it's habitable. We're proud to say right now that the fire marshal has approved what we've done, inspected it. The state health department has inspected it, and everything's running smoothly. Sooner or later, we're going to have to find the funds to construct the jail. It's falling apart. We have a monthly maintenance bill for plumbing and just things that break down all the time. We're proud to say that we eliminated the window issue where inmates were hollering out the windows. We've got those all welded up and closed down. We do have central air and heat now. We had electric in the cells at one time. All that has been taken out. We have a extremely modern, brand new video surveillance system. All the cells are monitored. We have what we call a holding cell for crazy inmates that, believe it or not, sometimes when someone's arrested, they want to fight. And if they're on drugs or, and just totally out of it, we have what we call a crazy chair. They're strapped in a crazy chair. And we can deal with these individuals at the present jail, but with just one jailer working a shift, I would sure like to see the county commission try to find some kind of funding to even think about, try to think about building a new facility.
Long range plan.
Long range, exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And we'll get Scott Lawley's response to his ideas concerning new jail construction in the county.
As far as the issue of the county jail, well, that's a simple issue. We don't need a new jail. There's nothing wrong with the jail we got now. That jail was built in 1964 and it was built, as I recall, under a federal grant. It's designed to house 55 inmates. It can house 75 inmates if you put mattresses on the floor during tough times, but you wouldn't want to do that because you would get sued if you try to house 75 inmates. But there's nothing wrong with that jail. That jail has one problem, and that's the plumbing. The plumbing in that jail has always been a problem. It was when I lived there. I lived in that jail for 10 years, and the plumbing's always been a problem. The plumbing will always be a problem. There's one more issue that you'll run into with that jail from time to time, and that is, due to the age of the jail, certain locks and certain mechanisms are outdated and it's hard to get a replacement for it because they may not make that lock anymore. You run into issues like that with that jail. But I think it would be much cheaper just to have a complete locking system redone than to build a jail. And let me tell you about the jail. Years ago there was a push for a new jail, and one of the main reasons, as I recall, was that the windows was open in the jail, and when people would walk across the street, the jail was downtown, and when people would walk across the street, the inmates would hoot and jeer and yell at the people. And I got to admit, I wasn't a fan of air conditioning inside the jail, but I'm looking at that was done 8 years ago, and that remedied a problem. Yeah, they got air conditioning, but it also remedied a problem because now the windows are down in the jail, and they can yell all they want, you can't hear them out in the street. So even though I didn't agree with the air conditioning 8 years ago, I can see another benefit of the air conditioning now. That eliminated that problem. The windows in the jail can be let down. You got more control over what they're doing. They're not yelling at people walking down the streets. And as I see it, the only problem with that jail right now is plumbing, and maybe some old mechanisms. That jail needs some updates. The camera system in that jail is inadequate. They need a better camera system in that jail, but we do not need a new jail.
And now we're going to take a short break to thank our wonderful sponsors, Alpha Insurance of Gibbertown and Hardee's of Butler. We'll be right back.
Don't settle for second best. Alpha is Alabama's #1 life insurance company. We offer a variety of plans to fit your insurance needs. Plus, you'll get friendly, personal service from our hometown team. Call Alpha and see why more Alabamians trust Alpha to protect their families than any other company. In Gibbertown, call Alpha agents John Cave or Randy McKee at 251-843-5556 or stop by our office at 13740 Highway 17. In Butler, call Alpha agents Alex DeShadows or Scarlett Johnston at 205-459-2212 or stop by our office located at 229 South Mulberry Avenue in Butler. Alabama's #1 life insurance company, Alpha.
Back to work.
The Western Extra Bacon Thick Burger at Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. See X-Men Days of Future Past in theaters May 23rd.
Thank you for joining us again. Scott Lawley will get the next question first, and the question is, what is your policy on inmate accountability, such as work release, trustees, inmates outside of the jail area, and questions like those?
All right. The question is inmates on the street, trustees. Under all circumstances, if you're an inmate, you need to be in a uniform. An inmate should not be, trustee or inmate should not be walking around in plain clothes. You need to be able to readily identify that inmate. Trustees should be composed of people that are misdemeanor criminals that have been found guilty of only a misdemeanor crime, and the sheriff has to do something similar to what the Alabama Department of Corrections does, which is a classification system. You need to look at your inmate and make sure that the person that you select as a trustee is going to be okay. You don't, protection of people, protection of property is utmost important. And as far as the inmates getting out outside of the fence of the jail, I'm opposed to it. Maybe you need a runner to run something back and forth from the jail to the courthouse, but beyond that, I don't see any need in the inmates outside of the fence moving around. And as far as work release and situations like that I'm not going to eliminate the work release program. I will do this with the work release program. If you're on work release, you're going to be a misdemeanor criminal. I'm not putting felons on the work release program. In fact, convicted felons' homes is the state penitentiary, not the county jail. So when we talk about the whole work release program, I'm not doing away with the work release program. But what I am saying is this: if you have been convicted of a felony crime, your home is the state penitentiary, not the county jail. I'm going to keep the work release program. And on top of that, I'll tell you this, I'm going to adopt the Alabama Department of Corrections work release program standards. You have to go before the county commission to formally adopt their standards and their rules, and I'm absolutely going to do that. And within that solves 90% of your problems, because it's full of lessons learned from the Alabama Department of Corrections. But felony inmates, people found guilty of felony crimes, their home is the state penitentiary. We're going to keep the work release program, and the people on the work release program will be guilty of misdemeanors.
In time, I'll repeat the question for you. What's your policy on inmate accountability, such as work release, trustees, inmates outside of the jail area, etc.?
Yes, ma'am. Like I said earlier, we're the first administration to have a written policy and procedures manual for the jail. All inmates are lockdown inmates until they earn the right to be trustee. Lockdown inmates wear white and orange and white striped uniforms. I'm sure people have seen them outside in the yard walking around. Trustees wear white uniforms, and on the back it says property of Choctaw County. They do all of the maintenance at the jail, the cleaning, the sweeping, the mopping. They come over to the courthouse, they sweep out, they help courthouse staff. Our work release program are made of individuals that have property crimes or crimes that they owe money on, and when they're paid through their work release program, that money is diverted to either paying their court costs or paying for victims. Before anyone's released out on work release, we contact the victims' families to make sure that they don't have a problem with that inmate being on a work release. Any issue at all from a victim's family, that individual does not go out on work release. But You know, being a new sheriff, my first term, I talked to some of the other sheriffs. Clark County's got a fantastic work release program. I think he has 50 or 60 inmates out on work release, and he has, you know, the whole gambit. He has state inmates from the state penitentiary that he houses, and he uses them for work release, generates money for his jail. He does a fantastic job. And I don't have nearly the amount of, you know, work release inmates that he does, but we try to make sure that that money is spent, you know, like I said earlier, to the victims and court costs and things like that.
Okay. Thank you. Sometimes I think we simplify the office of sheriff. We think of it in terms of arresting, packing heat, those type responsibilities. But there's another side of being a sheriff, the administrative side, that is probably the most complicated and complex part of being a sheriff. And so we know that sometimes the public really doesn't consider that side or know very much about that side of the office. Would you share with us what your qualifications are in terms of being an administrator in the office?
Well, I would think my biggest qualification is my years of experience, plus when I went to the FBI National Academy, one of my classes was Business Administration at the University of Virginia. I found out you cannot micromanage a sheriff's department. My chief deputy that I hired, Kenneth Thomas, when I hired him, I told him it's his responsibility to run the deputies, run the sheriff's department, run the day-to-day operations of the road. My office personnel staff, Miss Diane Keaton, she's been there a long time, very, very, very experienced. I promoted her to office manager, and she's in charge of the office. Miss Gail Goff, she's the jail administrator. She handles all the issues at the jail. It's my job as the sheriff to make sure they have the things that they need to run their individual departments. I have to deal with the circuit clerk, probate court, all of the circuit judges, the district judges, civil and criminal cases. Have to deal with payroll, have to deal with personal issues, sick leave, the whole gambit of actually running a business. It's not just being a police officer anymore. And even when I was the chief of police, you know, basically it was just police in my town. Now as a sheriff, there's so many different things. And I'll be honest with you, I have never loved a job as much as I have being sheriff.
Thank you. I know with Alabama Southern, we supplement our programs and our resources to serve our students better with grants. We write state grant funding and federal grant funding, and I know that on the administrative side, that's an aspect of the office. Could you talk with us about how you do or would pursue grant funding and the importance of grant funding to the department? Extremely important, extremely important.
Candace Jenkins, my warrant clerk, she has found several different federal and ADECA grants for us. Bulletproof vests, patrol rifles, part of the canine that we received was on a partial grant, several things. That frees up our normal budget money to purchase other things. The COPS grant, it's COPS, Community Oriented Policing Systems, or program. They're very, very difficult to get, and you have to have a budget where if you do get a COPS grant for a police officer, that means if you get a COPS grant and you hire an additional police officer, the first year it's free, the second year they pay 75%, the third year it's 50%, and then the fourth year the county has to take it all on. So if you cannot afford that additional deputy, you can't get the grant. If you get the grant and you can't afford it, you have serious issues with the federal government. You have to pay back the money that they paid you. So the smaller grants, you know, we're constantly out there looking. I've been asked several times, well, how about hiring a grant writer? Well, again, that's money out of your budget. If there's a grant writer out there that's willing to do it on a pro bono, if the grant gets approved, and you know, we can pay her out of the grant, that'd be fantastic. But I haven't found that person yet. So But yeah, they're very important for us.
Okay, thank you. And Scott, the question goes to you.
What a lot of people don't see is the sheriff is an administrator too. You got a 4 or 5 deputy county. Well, let's face it, when you only have 4 or 5 deputies, the sheriff from time to time, he needs to be a deputy too. But behind the scenes in that office, a lot of times what you don't see is the whole administrative aspect that goes on in the sheriff's department. And the sheriff has to handle all the time of the inmate, all the time of the deputies. He has to handle all the administrative functions of the county jail. As an administrator, the sheriff's #1 job as an administrator is to help get money for the department, and then there's another one. He should help keep the liability off of the county as much as possible. You know, attempt to prove your sheriff's department and your county jail as well as you can against lawsuits. And as far as my qualifications on that, you know, I was a military policeman in the Army at the 1165th National Guard Unit. I also worked there at some short point in time in another capacity as a military police investigator. I was activated in Iraq. I came home and I went full-time with the U.S. Air Force at Danley Field in Montgomery. So I spent 5 years there. And then I got hired as an Alabama State Trooper, and they sent me to Mobile County. And while I was in Mobile County, I need to back up before all of this. I got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of South Alabama. But when I'm in Mobile County as a trooper, I worked there. I came to Choctaw County, and in 2003 I assumed a supervisor responsibility. I began supervising people in 2003 before I was ever promoted to corporal. And for 4 years I supervised people. And in 2007 I was promoted to corporal. And then that duty position was in Montgomery, and it was in executive security. But while I was in Montgomery in executive security, I had the benefit of working with a lot of good people with administrative skills and abilities in a very close, tight framework there at headquarters. I've done that for 3 years, and then I took a position in the Alabama Bureau of Investigation. And I worked my first year in Mobile, then I worked a short time in Evergreen, and then I was assigned to Grove Hill. But while in Grove Hill, the Selma region was shorthanded. And so I was assigned Mobile, Grove Hill, Evergreen during my weekly hours, but I was on call for cases in Selma, which is Green Period Hill, Sumter, Marengo, Wilcox, Dallas County, to include everything in the Mobile, Grove Hill, Evergreen region. In doing that, you have to supervise a lot of people, and you have to deal with a lot of issues. Administratively, you're going to deal with grants on the side. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you about grants. Find an expert. Don't try to do it on your own, because there's people that have full-time jobs dealing with grants. They wake up every day reading them. So a smart administrator would find a good grant person. And as far as administration, there's two facets of administration. There's a manager and there's a leader, and they're totally two unique, different things. A good manager is one thing, and a good leader is another. And a good administrator knows when to be a good manager and when to be a good leader.
Next question, first for Scott. What are some specific goals you would have for the department over the next few years, and where do you see the most need for change?
Specific goals and changes needed within the Sheriff's Department. My goal is to make a full-time investigator with that Sheriff's Department. we need a full-time investigator. Working with all the different sheriffs in the surrounding areas as I have, one thing I've noticed is that every county in my working area has an investigator. And that investigator handles all your burglaries, your thefts, your follow-ups, if a murder happens. And I've worked with a lot of different investigators in murders. And they usually, whenever I'm called to their county to work a murder, I'm paired up with their investigator. While I'm working with him on that murder, from time to time, he'll reach over and he'll deal with a burglary issue, a theft issue, or something else. That's imperative because who is doing the investigations in the county right now? You send a uniformed deputy out to take a report of a theft and he files a report. Well, who's doing the investigation? You need a dedicated man to do follow-up on all that. And that's one goal. And another goal, and it's the goal that I'm about to mention, is it's a far-reaching goal, is that I want to look into federal funding. I don't know how well that'll work because you're dealing with the federal government. There's always red tape there, and they have certain requirements from year to year, but I want to look at federal funding. And I say federal funding because I know the county can't afford this. So I'm trying to outsource and find my funding for it. But we need, if I can get a federal grant, I want to hire 2 more officers and create a narcotics unit within the Sheriff's Department. Not only do I want to create a narcotics unit within the Sheriff's Department, but I would love to secure an apartment along Vanity Fair in one of those apartment complexes. Hopefully, one of the apartments there would loan us an apartment and put those 2 narcotics agents in that apartment. And the reason why I say that is about 30% of the county's calls go to the apartment complexes on Vanity Fair Drive. So if those 2 narcotics agents are working a case or doing some undercover work in one part of the county and they're through for the day, they can go back to those apartments and sit down and talk with people or whatever. They're randomly coming in and out of those apartment complexes, and that's going to help do something with the whole drug trade going on in the apartments. A full-time, a dedicated investigator, 2 narcotics officers, those are the goals that I see that need to be reached, and the immediate changes that I see need to be reached. There's a lot of changes with the jail that I intend to have happen also.
Tom, your specific goals and where you see the most need for change.
If I could, I'd like to say something about Scott's last question. If we lived in a perfect world and I had unlimited funding, I would have an investigator. I fight for my budget August and September of each year. It gets approved in October, and I have 5 road deputies. If I could afford an investigator, I would. If I had 2 drug investigators, that's just fantasy land. I just don't understand how someone could tell the people that that's what he's going to do, and it's not going to happen. I have trained deputies. My chief deputy was a chief of police for almost 20 years. My sergeant is an investigator, was an investigator for the district attorney. Each major crime that we have, a lead investigator is selected to handle those cases. The cases are not forgotten about or whatever. I just feel it's wrong for someone to promise people something that they definitely can't deliver. I apologize about that, but what goals do I have?
Yes. And where you see the most need for change.
We've come a long way in the last 3.5 years. When I first took over, our vehicles had 300,000 miles on them. I was authorized to purchase 1 vehicle. I convinced the commission to lease 5 with the same amount of money for purchasing 1. That alleviated the maintenance on 4 of the older vehicles. All of the deputies now are uniformed. They all have the same uniform. They all have department-issued Glock 40 caliber weapons. They're interchangeable. All of their equipment is paid for through the Sheriff's Department. They have patrol rifles. They have shotguns. I know the needs of my deputies. I started as a road patrolman all the way down the bottom, and I worked my way all the way up. And I'm going to make sure that my deputies have what they need to do their job. And my goals for the future is to keep my funding up, keep fighting crime. Right now we are a responsive or a reactive sheriff's department, which means we react to crime. I want to be a proactive sheriff. I want to be able to have some crime prevention programs, talk with senior citizens about senior protection, flim flam, a lot of programs that I'm thinking about, starting. It's been a long 3 years to try to get everything, how far we've come, excuse me. I'm very proud of where we are right now, and I know we can go a lot further.
Okay, thank you. And Tom, we're going to let you have the next question first, all right? What do you consider your greatest accomplishment in law enforcement, and what qualifications do you bring to the job? I know we covered a little bit of that in the bio, but if you want to add to it.
My greatest accomplishment is easy. Being elected by the people of Choctaw County to serve as their sheriff in 2010. My second greatest accomplishment was being one of 9 executive level police officers selected to attend the FBI National Academy. Not only did I attend, I graduated. I received certifications from the University of Virginia in homicide investigation, interview and interrogation, advanced latent fingerprints, and business administration. Over 37 years of law enforcement experience. I started in the military I started in the United States Army when I was 19 in 1976. I was a young buck, put a gun on and a badge, and they tell me to go out there and arrest people. First duty assignment was Huntsville, Alabama. In 1979, I was sent to Germany, and I went to military police investigation school, and I worked for almost 3 years as a military police investigator, mainly working with the German police and a joint drug suppression team member. I saw a lot of action there. We kicked in a lot of doors. I've seen a lot of horrible things when I was in Germany. 1981, I was honorably discharged from the Army. In 1982, I was hired at Millbury as a part-time police officer, and then went on to Chatham police officer. I believe it was 1982, I went to the Southwest Alabama Police Academy and graduated second out of my class. Worked again, stayed in Chatham and Millbury back and forth. 1990, I was appointed chief of police in Gilbertown. In 95, that's when I was selected to go to the FBI National Academy. In 2006, I was named law enforcement liaison for Homeland Security in Choctaw County. We received a lot of equipment, material, pickup truck, four-wheelers, trailers, command post trailers that I've been in supervision of. I went to Mobile with our past DMA director, and was certified in incident command and the NIM system, National Incident Management Systems, and I'm trained in that. And in 2010, I was elected sheriff.
All right, thank you. And now the question goes to Scott.
My qualifications really began here probably when I was 5 years old. You know, I've had the fortune and benefit of shadowing someone for almost 32 years and watching them do this job, you know. Hanging around listening to how my father handled things, actually going out with him on a few things, and just over the years I've gained a wealth of experience on that. The problem in most areas is you can't claim that experience in law enforcement circles, but in Choctaw County I'm going to try to claim that, because you know, if you're a carpenter and you're a child of a carpenter and you're raised up working in that, by the time you're age 15, you're pretty sharp carpenter, you know. So that's where my qualifications begin. And then I went to the University of South Alabama, where I graduated with a Bachelor's of Administration in Criminal Justice. Military experience as a military policeman in the Army, Air Force security policeman, a Coast Guard investigator, and I also worked in intelligence with the U.S. Coast Guard, which really helps with the intelligence units and the intelligence that that goes on in law enforcement circles. Then I become Alabama State Trooper, and I worked the road for 10 years in Mobile and Choctaw County. Then I entered into truck enforcement or commercial vehicle enforcement. That really helped my knowledge of the area and the industry. If there's anything I gained from that, it's a good knowledge of the area and the industry. And it really helps me because I've actually done some work on some stolen trucks and stolen trailers and stuff like that, and that helped me there. My next thing that I done, I went to Montgomery as a corporal in executive security, and that really leads me up to my greatest accomplishments. Is my first year in Montgomery in executive security, I was tasked with the overall protection of the Capitol complex. That's all the buildings and stuff. And I can't give you a number on this because it would be a security issue, but I was in charge of hundreds of cameras. I was in charge of all the building security, the overall protection of it. I had to develop evacuation plans. I had to develop threat response plans. All kinds of scenario plans from envelopes and poison in envelopes to planes crashing in the facility to sniper plans. And while I was doing that, I also done surveys of the buildings, and I done security surveys to improve the security of the overall Capitol complex. But my greatest accomplishment during that time period was I had a collateral duty, and it was 2010, and it was during the presidential elections. And my collateral duty, it was me and another trooper, and we were assigned to all the protection details involving the presidential candidates, the U.S. senators, the secretaries of state, and all the different departments. So I guarded, as far as my greatest accomplishment, I guarded every living president except Ronald Reagan and their spouses. So I'm really proud of that. The second and third year in Montgomery, I was in charge of the governor's mansion security, and that I'm pretty proud of that also. Then in 2010, I moved to the Alabama Bureau of Investigation, and while I was there, I had a supervisor that noticed something about me in an interview, and he decided that I needed to go to hostage negotiation school. And I went to that school, and while I was in that school, they told me, they said, well, you may go 2 or 3 years without an actual hostage negotiation incident. Most of your situations are barricaded suspects without a hostage, so don't be surprised if you go 2 or 3 years without one of these incidents ever happening. And I think I'd been a certified hostage negotiator for about 1.5 years, and that's when the incident in Dothan occurred with Mr. Pullum, the school bus driver, and the little child in the hole. And I was called, I think, either the second or the third day that happened, and I went over there, and I was on the hostage negotiation team there during that time period. And that may be my greatest accomplishment there. And to record, I think that may be the first ever underground barricaded hostage incident. So today, when the FBI teaches at hostage negotiation school, when they teach advanced hostage negotiation school, they teach the Dothan incident and the Dothan scenario, so I'm very proud of that.
Now we're going to give both our candidates the opportunity to speak directly to you, our viewers, and share with you any thoughts that they want to, and in terms of what they want you to know as you go to the polls on June the 3rd and decide who will be our sheriff after the next election. And so we'll start first with Scott.
The overall picture, my overall message to you is my promise to you is I plan to work hard. I will make mistakes, but I will be trying while I'm making those mistakes. I will be available to the people. One thing I found out from one end of this county to the other, no matter where you go, people want to be able to walk in and sit down and talk to the sheriff. But when they have a problem, they want to be able to tell you the problem, and they want you to listen to them from beginning to end. Now, you may know within 2 minutes that there's nothing you can do for them, but you need to hear them out from the beginning to the end. And something I've learned in that is that you might not can do nothing for them, but you hear them out completely to the end, and they may give you a solution to a problem you've already had that you didn't know the answer to. Or they may tell you of a problem that you have that you're not aware of. So my promise is hard work and to be available to the people. I would ask on June 3rd when you go vote that you would give me some consideration in the matter, and on June 3rd, if you would, go and vote for Scott Raleigh for sheriff.
And Tom, your closing comments to the voters?
I would just like everybody to try to remember when I first got elected, April 2011, we were hit by all the tornadoes. We worked night and day, north and south of the county. We were there. My first 3 or 4 months, we had 3, 4 murders. One of them was a capital murder. We worked those. We didn't have equipment. The jail was closed. I want people to remember how far we've come. We've got the jail reopened. We have new vehicles. We have new uniforms. I promise to continue to treat all people equally and fairly, regardless of who they are. I've said that from day one, and I'll continue to say it when I'm re-elected. Individuals that are given favors to or treated specially just because of who they are or how rich they are, I've never condoned that, and I never will. I stand for, I have a line. If you cross that line, I'm going to do my job. And I hope the people have found that out in the last 3 years. On June the 3rd, if you want to continue the fight, keep our Sheriff's Department moving forward, I would ask you to vote for me, Tom Abate, as your next sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you. And we thank Tom and Scott for taking the time to answer our questions, and Tom for being here, and Scott for videotaping his responses. Being sheriff is a very time-consuming job, and we appreciate not only your being here, but we appreciate the fact that you and Scott and the third candidate, Mr. McGrew, that you're willing to make that commitment to the citizens of Choctaw County. So we thank all 3 of you for caring enough to run for this office. Sure. And we wish all 3 of you good luck in the election. We certainly want to remember to thank our generous sponsors, Alpha Insurance of Gilberttown and Hardee's of Butler. Please go by and let them know that you appreciate their sponsoring broadcasts like this, so we can bring information to the voters, so we can make better decisions when we go to the polls as an educated populace. We certainly want to thank ChoctawSunTV for bringing us broadcasts like this. Without them and their commitment to the community, it would not have been possible. So thank you, Sun TV. We certainly want you to join us next week. We will have a live broadcast again next week, 6 o'clock. Next Thursday, May the 22nd, and we'll be interviewing those candidates for Commissioner's office, and so certainly want you to join us. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate your concern for Choctaw County and appreciate the time that you've taken to tune in and learn more about the issues you will be voting on June the 3rd. So good night and God bless. And now we're going to thank our wonderful sponsors again, Alpha and Hardee's. Thank you. Good night.
Don't settle for second best. Alpha is Alabama's #1 life insurance company. We offer a variety of plans to fit your insurance needs. Plus, you'll get friendly, personal service from our hometown team. Call Alpha and see why more Alabamians trust Alpha to protect their families than any other company. In Gilberttown, call Alpha agents John Cave or Randy McKee at 251-843-5556 or stop by our office at 13740 Highway 17. In Butler, call Alpha agents Alex DeShadows or Scarlett Johnston at 205-459-2212 or stop by our office located at 229 South Mulberry Avenue in Butler. Alabama's #1 life insurance company, Alpha.
Back to work.
The Western Extra Bacon Thick Burger at Carl's Jr. and Hardee's. See X-Men Days of Future Past in theaters May 23rd.